We are amazing because our passion is limitless and our drive is intense. Therefore, you will not deny our grind. You are now listening to the Faith, Grind, and Inspire podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Faith, Grind, Inspire, and we are ready to rock today. I am your host, Jeffrey Patrick. I get to be the host today because Gene Alert then gave me a little responsibility. Say big up to my boy Gene Alert. I'm the co-host, I'm with the most and the toast. He knows that. Anyway, we have a very special guest tonight, or today, I should say, or wherever you're listening to us across this world. Torah Bontrager.
That's correct.
Now I want you to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourselves. Well, first, let me say, Torah is the executive director of the Amish Heritage Foundation, right?
Yes.
Right. So, coming closer, talk on the mic.
Okay, can you hear me here?
I want them to
okay, that's better.
hear you loud and clear, all right? Because we're going to talk about some good, like, diversity and inclusion. We want everyone to feel welcome, okay? This is our mission. So, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, Torah, and how you got here. And a matter of fact, give them a little bit about your history and your coming up, because I thought it was like straight just. Wait till you hear this. Bree. All right, go ahead. Tell them.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me, and thank you to Gene, who's not here, but thank you. I'm very excited to be here and share my story and probably reach an audience that I haven't really reached much before. So thanks for that opportunity. So what you and I have in common is we're GSers, and anybody who's listened to your episode will know what that means. Right. We're very special Columbia University students.
Exactly. We're non-traditional students at Columbia University.
Yes. But I usually start off.
And we're alumni.
Yes.
Association board members, executive members.
Correct.
I mean, we got to tell them.
Yeah, all that good stuff. Yes. We earned it.
Yeah, exactly.
So usually I start off by asking people, have you heard of the Amish? And most people will say yes, and some people will say no. Uh-huh. And if you haven't heard of the Amish, we're these people
Lancaster.
Well, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania is where the first and oldest Amish settlement is. Yeah, but we're actually in 30 states throughout the U.S.
Right.
And I did not grow up in Lancaster County. I grew up in the Midwest. So I was born and raised Amish, horse and buggy, transportation, no internet, no radio. Never knew what a mic was. Something like this is just like another planet. No electricity.
I know.
Yeah, and English is not my first language. A lot of people aren't aware of that, so I speak a different language.
Say, I love you, Jeff, in their original language.
Ik like you, Jeffrey.
Oh, nice. And what's that language called?
Amish. Now, that's something that is not recognized by etymologists yet still, although linguists who know their stuff will agree it's its own language. And it does meet the socio-political criteria to be categorized as its own language, but there's a lot of colonialist attitudes towards my culture by people who are not Amish, who have manufactured a little empire for themselves, preying on our culture or co-opting it and creating whatever mythology they think is beneficial.
But there's another group.
Are you talking about the Mennonites?
The Mennonites.
Okay, yeah, I'm impressed.
The Mennonites.
You know about the Mennonites.
Yeah, right. The Mennonites.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know about the Mennonites. But
how do you know?
Because I've had a run-in with Lancaster County. I did. And a friend of mine was actually there visiting, and we got to talking about it, and he was telling me about how there's two groups there. And I was like, really? There are two groups? And he's like, yeah, the Mennonites and the Amish. And they're like, they have different ways of going about doing things, and they actually don't see eye to eye, he said. I was like, really?
Yeah.
I didn't, and then I figured you were here, we could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. There's actually a lot more than two groups. So just a history of of this in one sentence, basically, is that the Amish come out of the Protestant Reformation back in Europe in 1525. It spawned all sorts of Protestant denominations. And one of those lineages is what's called Anabaptists. And those are people who believe that getting baptized as an infant in the Catholic Church was invalid because, a baby could not consciously decide.
Make a choice.
Right. So I love that theory. I think, that's a great theory. But what's happened now over 300 years later, the Amish aren't giving their own children a choice. So if you hear anything, one of the biggest myths about us is Rumspringa. And that's the idea in pop culture. The belief is that, the Amish church gives their children an actual choice whether or not they want to stay in the church. That's not true. It's what we're told as kids, but we know you're not actually ever supposed to leave the church. You're not supposed to escape or leave or resign after you get baptized. And if you do, you are shunned or excommunicated for life. Depending, how severe that is depends on the family, of course, the specific family
Your book, The Amish Girl in Manhattan. Wait, before we even get into that, right? Go ahead and tell them a little bit more about yourself and how you came about it. Because I think it's like one of the bravest things that Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I was 11, I made the conscious decision that I was going to escape. I knew I had to escape before I got baptized. And that would be before I'm, 16, 17, around that age or 18.
You had to leave.
I had to escape. Yes, I was not. Not even leave.
I was trying to clean it up. let's just make it what it is then. All right.
Yeah, because there is a difference.
Yeah.
There are 3 different ways, that you can exit the community, and one of them is a literal escape.
Give me the 3. You can
escape, leave, or resign. Resign references what happens after you've been baptized, and by that time you're older, and you're resigning from the church. Leave means you haven't yet been baptized. So this is how I define it. These are the distinctions I make. And you may or may not have a traumatic leaving. It again depends on your age, whether or not you're a girl versus a boy, and your particular family.
All right, go with the escape.
And the escape.
Go with the escape.
So for 4 years,
I like escape.
For 4 years, I planned my escape, trying to figure out how can I get out without being sent back by the police. And I wanted to go to school. So the only thing that I was confident about myself in was my aptitude for learning. I did well in school. Yes.
Wow. Okay, go ahead.
And I wanted to go to high school. And I cried when I graduated from the Amish 8th grade, and I could not go to school anymore. That was a horrible day for me. I was 13 years old.
Right.
And and just in terms of education, I went to a one-room schoolhouse with Amish-only kids and Amish teachers who themselves haven't been educated beyond the 8th grade. And we did not learn science, any kind of science, for example, and no current, history or geography. I learned from 1970s textbooks, so I know the Soviet Republic, like the old USSR.
Right. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
I didn't know what H2O meant.
Wow.
Yeah, I was sitting in my first year of high school, post-escape, sitting in chemistry class, and everybody, the teacher's saying something about H2O, and all the kids know what that is. I'm like, what's H2O? And the response, there was dead silence in the classroom. Yeah. Everybody looked at me like, what stone did you crawl out from under?
Wow. Okay, so let's get back to the escape.
Back to the escape.
Now, I'm going to go to the day of the escape.
Okay.
Gene, listen to the day of the escape. Okay, Gene? All right.
Okay, so I had a failed first attempt, and that put me under Amish house arrest for 9 months.
Tell me about that.
Basically.
Tell me about the failed attempt.
Okay, so I had gotten a bus ticket. I was going to leave the bus station 2 hours south or something like that.
How in the world did you get a bus ticket? I gotta ask.
Because as you know, all Amish kids are forced to do, it's basically child labor. Like we get put to work at a very young age. I was 13, 14. I was 12 years old when I started picking asparagus 12 hours a day in the asparagus fields.
I love asparagus.
I hate asparagus to this day because of that. Oh my God, I can still smell the juice and it dripping down my it is just so gross.
Okay, all right. Okay.
But yeah, so I started skimming money. I was paid in cash because you know, that's the Amish way, right? We don't
like people don't understand. Like when you're in an Amish town, right, and the store, and you go to the store, and there's no one at the store, you can actually buy what you want, leave your money in the counter, and go about your business, and buy what you want. If you need change, you go into the till, you take the change, you put it back in.
Well, it depends, on the store, but that is, it
is a practice.
Right. Yes, I can go. I know that I can just. Yeah, leave cash.
That won't work in the South Bronx.
Yeah,
Brooklyn, forget it.
So anyway, I'm getting paid. I'm putting in 14-hour days working this job for an Amish bakery and an English. Anybody who's not Amish is English. Employer for the asparagus fields, and I would get paid in cash. And I started, and I was forced to turn over all the money I earned to my parents because the idea was that,
family.
What's that?
The family.
Well, no, like it was my fault for being born. I owe it to them to pay off that debt. That's the way I call it.
Whoa.
Yeah. You do not get to have your own money.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
So I knew I had to. Be able to pay for this bus ticket, for example, somehow. So I just, saved up enough money and figured out
How did you get to buy the ticket, though?
Because in the community, at that community that we lived in at the time, it was one of the more modern communities.
Where
which
exactly?
Meant this was in Michigan.
In Michigan.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the small communities.
Gotcha.
I never grew up in a big community.
Okay.
But that meant that, we're modern, which meant we had phones in the barn. And we were allowed bicycles. So I would, I rode my bike to get the tickets.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you get caught when you
All
right.
Okay. So the night before, I'm sorry, somebody off camera is laughing. So
that's Brie. She's the boss over there.
Yeah. So the night before, I'm calling some of the taxi drivers. So the Amish have designated taxi drivers. We're allowed to pay English people to drive us around, but we're going to go to hell if we drive a car ourselves.
Oh, so you can take rides, but you can't drive.
Yes, I know it's the lady, and I'm thinking she ratted me out, right? I didn't know that she was
got to
doing this out of genuine concern.
She was just saying.
Yes, and so I hear on the stairs like a thump, thump, thump up the stairs. And like my stomach is all the way down, sunk to the ground. And I just, this is the end of my life. And there's a hallway. So the upstairs is a little weird. It's L-shaped. So I hear the footsteps reach the top of the staircase. And then it's like dunk, 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 dunk. Towards my door, and I'm just wishing like something magic to happen where I disappear or that door doesn't open.
Somebody help me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen. Oh my God. And it's my father who is just
livid.
Oh my God. Like he's a tyrant, psychopath, terrorist type. I mean, seriously. And I didn't realize this until I wrote my memoir, but what happened that night to me was classic interrogation techniques applied on me, where I was not allowed to go to sleep. I was forced to stay up all night and listen to him yelling at me or like using different routines about how evil I was or why I did this or what were you going to do. And I had to make these decisions about what was I going to say and not say. Like at that point, I had two choices. One was to just say F off.
Conform.
One was just to be the all-out rebellious person.
Yeah.
And if you go to, a far enough extreme with that, they give up. They can't, what are they going to do? Or I could pretend to be the good girl and repent and all of that. And I chose the latter because I wanted them to remember that when I did successfully leave, that I left because I had a valid reason. It wasn't because I was just this rebellious, angry teenager, which is always what you're labeled with if you escape or leave. Which, of course, that never did any good. I should have just chosen in hindsight to be the rebellious person and just not have endured all that, 9 months of hell.
Torture.
Yeah. But yeah, that day, I was not allowed to sleep for 24 hours. I was then finally, when the sun, started rising, I see dawn out my window. I'm still in my bed.
You can cry. Come on, cry. You can cry. It's okay. Yeah, you go on. Yeah, you can cry. Cry for Faith Grind and Spider. Come on.
There might be something else that'll make me cry. I mean, I never know.
Right.
Sometimes things, make me cry that I'm not expecting, and others,
I got you.
Talked about it so often or written about it or thought through it, that it's not emotional like that anymore, but you never know, what's gonna, set the tears off.
I'll bring it out in a second.
But yeah, so then morning comes and I'm put into a van with a whole bunch of with a number of other adults. So my parents and some other members of the community, and I'm taken to this Amish counseling center. And it's basically sort of how I describe it is like gay conversion therapy. Like, except this wasn't, trying to convert me out in that way, but it was like religious conversion therapy, something like that, like where
sensitivity training.
Yeah, where the idea was never about asking anything about what the child, what's wrong in the home life, or what does a child want.
No, your perspective was never considered whatsoever.
Right. Yeah. And so I want to tie this back with the Rumspringa idea again. This idea that, we kids get a choice. We get a genuine choice to not only decide whether or not we want to remain in the church, but we're actually encouraged to go out in the world and party and drink. And that's completely false. I was sent to this counseling center by, an Amish bishop who is not certified at all. I mean, we don't have an education. We don't go and get training to be psychotherapists or anything.
Right.
So it was just whatever the religious doctrine was that just got, repeated and all of that. And so I very quickly figured out that if I just gave the right answers, I would be pronounced cured and I could quit going to these sessions. So I was just, I was always going different and thought of things. And I got the only way I made it through or sort of endured it was thinking of how I'm outsmarting that idiot.
I got you. No, I totally got you.
That makes sense. It was just torture.
Yeah. What was the days like in those?
So I had to sit alone with him. Okay. Who I find out, and there was just something very creepy about him, some very dark energy about him that creeped me out, that I did not, beyond just the whole religious thing in general. And later I find out he's a sexual predator, and I'm alone in that room with him. And then he talks to my parents alone. And then he puts us in the room together and talks and pretends to be a therapist, right? Some kids, have been dropped off alone in his facility with no adults, no parents, no communication. I got lucky, I guess, because I figured out I did a good enough act that I appeared reformed after a couple sessions.
Wow. Extreme paternalism. That is that's the case right there. Like, you have no say. Maternalism, paternalism, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
You have no say. And it's really wow. So that was your first time getting nabbed,
right?
I will say.
Right.
So second attempt, you were like, hold up. This is a jailbreak and nobody's stopping me.
Yeah, so
I pitied the fool. All right, go.
Second attempt, I figured out the second attempt, I'm going to take the car ferry. We lived in Ludington, Michigan, next to near the lake, and there's a car ferry service that crosses from Michigan to Wisconsin during the summers. And so I thought, okay, as soon as the car ferry season starts up in that May, or that following May, because this was in the fall that I had this failed attempt, and then the next May was when the car ferry season was going to start up. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna just bike. I can bike that distance and grab the car ferry, cross over to Wisconsin. I have an uncle who had left the church as well, and my plan was, he'd pick me up and I'd go, stay with another uncle in Montana. And I'd already been making collect phone calls to these two uncles for about a year. I would sneak out of the house at night after everybody was asleep, and
in the barn.
Run out to the barn and make these collect calls. And again, knowing that, for me to know that collect calls wouldn't show up on a phone bill is more than most children would know, especially women, because, as girls, you're even more
smothered.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so 2 weeks before the car ferry season starts up, my parents decided to move. Now, they'd already been planning to move after my escape, because the belief is that, well, it must have, if we move, there's this element of that'll fix things. That's going to solve the problem. Let's move to a different community. Oh, bad influence. They're bad kids that Torah was around, and let's move to this community where all the kids are good. Good.
Yeah, I got you. I have no idea. So crazy.
So 2 weeks before my plans get completely shattered, I get moved to another part of the state down near Lansing. Yeah. I don't know where the nearest train station is, the nearest bus station is. And another thing is that the house we moved into was owned by an English family, so it still had the phone and electricity hookups, and there was no phone in the barn because it wasn't, retrofitted for an Amish family. So I couldn't make any phone calls.
Security and privacy is out of the, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All right, so go ahead.
But the one good thing that happened was that I was now off house arrest, or temporary enough that I was allowed to go back to work again at an Amish bakery at the new, community, a new family. And I was deemed, reformed enough to be trusted to bike back and forth on my own. And one day I saw, realized, I'm passing the Amish schoolhouse and that has a phone in it. So I make my call from there.
Right. No, I got you. Bingo.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I call, and this was 2 weeks after the move, so it took me that long to be off house arrest and then discover the phone in the schoolhouse.
I got you.
And I make a call to my Wisconsin uncle, and I say, if I could leave tonight, I would. I don't know how much I can take.
Yeah. I'm fed up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had already, before the move, discovered that there was such a thing as limited emancipation. And this goes back to what we're going to talk about, Wisconsin v. Yoder. I would read the little dinky newspaper during the day when my mother took her a nap, because girls aren't supposed to read the newspaper. That's evil, worldly. So I would read it when she took her nap. And that was my way of trying to educate myself about the transition, what was going on in the world. And I'm reading a dinky little newspaper. It's not like the New York Times
you're not getting a full-fledged story.
Yeah.
Like, oh, whatever.
Yeah. But one day the front page talked about a boy who got emancipation. So essentially he divorced his parents, and you could do that if you were at least 16, and you could prove that your parents were abusive. It was included educational deprivation as well. Now, I grew up knowing about the Supreme Court case, Wisconsin versus Yoder, which ruled in favor of Amish parents and the Amish religion, letting them keep their kids out of school after 8th grade, and letting the Amish have their own schools with no supervision. 1972. Yeah. So I'm very intimately connected to that story because the protests that led up to Yoder started in the Iowa community that I was born into in the 60s. So one of the families, when it finally escalated in Wisconsin, some of those families had moved there from the Iowa community I was born in. And there's also, in 1965, was sort of the pinnacle of, the turning point of these protests was when the public school administrator sent a school bus out to the Amish one-room schoolhouse to pick up the kids and take them into the public school because the Amish were breaking the law, and not the dispute there was that they didn't have certified teachers. The state was willing to compromise on, sure, you don't have to send your kids to school after age 14 if they're, if they have this vocational farming job, which is what a lot of the Amish, had farms, and so the state was fine with that, but they weren't fine with the Amish having a public, or having a schoolhouse that did not have a public certified teacher.
Right.
So anyway, they send this bus out, and there was a reporter as part of the crew, and he takes this photo of these kids running to the cornfields, because what happened was that the Amish parents had been notified the day before by the school district, hey, we're going to pick up, we're going to send the bus out. You're breaking the law. You can't do this. We're going to send the bus out, pick the kids up, take them into the public schools. And some of the parents were there that morning waiting for the school bus, and when they saw the school bus come in and the administrators trying to put the kids on the bus, they screamed to the kids like, spring to the Welschenfeld, run to the cornfields. And that's where you see this iconic photo that went viral and like hit made national and international news. And supposedly one of my uncles is in that photo. That's what he says. There's no way we can verify that, but this is my connection to this, which is why I knew when I saw that story about the boy getting emancipated, that was my solution to being able to leave before I was 18 and go to school and not get sent back by the police. I could claim, I could point to Yoder, Wisconsin versus Yoder, that yes, this is proof that I'm being educationally deprived. Now, the interesting question is, isn't this odd that I was allowed, it was considered valid that I was being deprived or my rights were taken away based on that case, when that case singled out Amish kids to specifically be denied legally an education? Is very interesting.
Yeah, that's odd.
But this is one of the, and of course now the work that I'm doing today trying to overturn Yoder, I'm arguing it, and the pro bono attorneys who are helping me and the Amish Heritage Foundation, we're arguing it's unconstitutional. But anyway, you can ask questions because I'm going in sort of, I'm covering a lot, so I don't know what.
So all right, so let's do this. In 3 days, the Amish Heritage Foundation is having its annual function. go ahead and tell us about that and how it's gonna unfold.
Yeah.
And how we can participate and how people can actually get a hold of it.
Yes. So the Amish Heritage Foundation is a nonprofit I founded, and our flagship project is to overturn Yoder, and it affects every child in the U.S., not just Amish children. And it's usually, thought of, oh, this is an Amish issue, but it's not. Because by overturning this, we're also at the same time pushing to make education a federal right, explicitly a federal right. And right now, the Constitution does not include in its explicit list of rights education.
Right.
And so the federal courts want to say, oh, education, we don't hold that any citizen, like your child, my child, anyone's child,
right.
an adult, no one has a right to an education according to the federal government. And so we want to change that. And the way to start, in my view, is by overturning Yoder, because that's a federal case. And it's, in my view, the best case.
You think you're going to get it overturned?
What's that?
Do you think you're going to get it overturned?
Yes. So I did not know what the chances would be of getting that done in my lifetime. I was willing to, die on my deathbed and it's still not being overturned. Like, I'm committed to this. This is how important it is.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I'm personally affected by this at a level that is hard. I was the U.S. Supreme Court agreed with the Amish religion that by virtue of me having been born in the Amish church, I do not have a right to become anything but a housewife. That's in the documents.
Wow.
So this is, and boys should not become anything but farmers. Those are the words in the document.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like,
yeah.
Wait a minute, man. Some people are really, really lucky.
But what happens then, because it was supposed to be a special exemption for only us Amish, because we're so pure and so, peaceful and crime-free. In the documents, you will also see that we supposedly have never committed any crimes. But then you're like, wait, why were we fighting this? Why were we in a courthouse?
I seen the Amish Mafia.
That's you can't anything that is a reality show is scripted. Okay,
so like, wait a minute, give me a break.
That's not real. I mean, the percentage that's real is no one, unless you're part of the culture, can figure out which part is real.
Yeah, what are they doing?
It's such a huge disservice. It's really very damaging to the kids and the vulnerable inside the community to have these reality shows, spewing all sorts of things.
I hate reality shows.
Yeah. And also,
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, there's also like a whole genre of Amish romance novels. I mean, can you believe that?
Yeah, I'm like, what?
It's like, what? And then there's this whole, Amish studies, little academia niche that is monopolized by these colonialist men, white men who don't talk to the women. All their material is based on Amish 8th grade males, like 8th grade education.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
It's just unbelievable. But anyway.
What was your personal essay like to Columbia when you were applying?
It was the story. The story. It's just that this is what I've done to in pursuit of learning, in pursuit of education.
Yeah, I'm a big education guy.
Yeah.
I'm a big academia guy.
Yeah.
I think that learning, right? Mm-hmm. Learning is probably one of the things that we all can do. Granted, there are levels to it, but learning is something that you can never put a foothold on. It's not something that you would. Okay, doctors, right? Because I'm in. Doctors are forever learning. You're never going to stop learning. Once you become a doctor, the minute you stop learning as a doctor, that means you're no more. So learning is the foundation of everything that we want to do. One of the reasons why people actually go to the medical field to medical treatment to medical cures is because they need help. Right?
Right.
And when you go to these doctors, you go and you get an opinion. Right?
Yes. I know.
Right?
Only because I've had like a whole host of medical problems.
Right. And then you go get another opinion. So it's constantly learning. And that's what learning is. That's why I consider learning to be the foundation. I call it the dynamic infrastructure of our society. Learning.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, since we're here on Faith Grind and Inspire, right, and we're dealing with the mindset of the entrepreneur, go ahead and let us all know why you are not a 9-to-5er. Nothing wrong with 9-to-5. Don't get it wrong. Let me say this right now. My wife, right, love her to death. She's a 9-to-5er, and I'm telling you, I would not be where I'm at today if I did not have that 9-to-5er in my life. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Love you, honey. Okay? Right. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that. So let's just.
Yes.
But tell us why you're not one.
Well,
and I know why I'm
yes,
not
and
one.
I agree with you. And I want to say, like there's only some people that are cut out to be entrepreneurs. Other people are cut out to be 9-to-5, or they fit that. I mean, that's what they want. That works
Gene
for
preached
them.
that all the time.
And I would not have, I would not be able to do what I'm doing. I mean, every organization needs 9-to-5 people who are happy to do that.
Yeah.
So it's very important. Like, we need each other. But yeah, the reason I can is I think differently.
Yeah.
I ask different questions. My worldview based on my story is just very different. And I tried the corporate 9-to-5 track. It didn't work for me. My bosses never gave me as much freedom as I wanted. And I was more efficient and better at executing or whatever. And, I worked so hard to have the life that I wanted, to fulfill my dreams, that I could not get myself locked into another prison. And to me, 9-to-5 is a prison.
So what would you be doing if you wasn't doing what you were doing today? What would you be doing? What would you be doing?
I would want to be in outer space, fly into outer space.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's one of my dreams, my childhood dreams, is I wanna be in space.
That might be soon possibility. That might be soon possible. It might soon be possible for us to take normal trips around the Earth. Virgin.
Yeah,
Atlantic
I know. Virgin Galactic. I know. If I would have gone a different track, it would have been astrophysics, and specifically, deep space exploration and things like that. And I did get my, single engine pilot's license at age 18, so I do know how to fly.
Like, you're really serious.
Yes, and one of my people I consider a mentor, even though I never knew him that well, but he just made he was an astronaut who was in space, who went into space 3 times when we still had the program, and that. Yeah, he made a big impression in my life when I was younger.
I like that. That's awesome. I mean, some people do. One of the things I like about the GSers is that their stories are incredible. You come across some of the smartest people in the world, and when they tell you the actual story, you're like, "What?
I know.
What in the world is that all about?"
Yeah,
but I hear you.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of the School of General Studies. I mean, that was when I got into Columbia and into the School of General Studies. I knew I belonged finally, because I was no longer the only one with a weird story or unique story. Other people got it.
See, that's one of the things I really like about I want to say camaraderie, but it's not. But the company that we keep is that everyone actually gets me. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when I can pontificate about a lot of things, and I can go on about all types of things, but not everyone really gets me.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when I'm in that, we're in our circle,
Yeah.
we're like,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're like, they see eye to eye, and they know exactly what to say, and
Right.
know how to say it, and know what I'm talking about, whatever vocabulary is being used. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I want to ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
What is the purpose of your life? I wanted to ask you that, and I want you to tell me, what's the purpose of your life?
Okay, first I have to throw out a disclaimer. I'm not a fan of, driving oneself to death trying to figure out what your purpose is, or some of the best advice I ever got was from someone, an astrophysicist, who said you create your own meaning in life. Mm-hmm. And that stuck with me a lot. And I would say, what I see as my purpose is fighting this Supreme Court case and fighting for the rights of Amish children, and also by extension all children in the U.S. Like, that to me is just something I'm very passionate about. Because I when I was a kid, nobody fought for me. My father didn't fight for me, my mother didn't fight for me, none of the community fought for me. And nobody on the outside fought for me.
Right.
And so
your uncles were there, though.
Well, they both raped me repeatedly after helping me escape.
What?
So that's a whole other twist to the story. Yeah.
I open Pandora's box every time I open my mouth.
And I'm not laughing because that's funny. I'm just I've just gotten to the point where I can talk about this
show. Oh my God, I did not expect you to say that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a whole other, we can talk about that as much as you want, but I know we're limited for time.
Time out. Bree, how much time we got? We don't have much time. Let's, all right, so let's, oh man, I'm lost for words now. I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
That is
it was just, talk about feeling abandoned and rejected, and just there is nothing good in the world, or what was the point of escaping, and feeling like at the time I believed in the God that I was raised in, and how could God do this to me was one of my questions. And
Lord.
Yeah, so that really, that left me really messed up.
Yeah.
And the only, I made it through my 20s. I made it through my teens and 20s. I got into Columbia. That was my only shot at being able to do what I felt was my purpose in life, which was helping these Amish children.
I feel you.
And I wasn't a male, so number one, we still don't have women's equality in mainstream culture much. That concept doesn't even exist in the Amish, but even in mainstream society, we don't have that. And so, I wasn't cut out for the 9-to-5 corporate ladder climbing thing. I couldn't do that. So my only shot at success, or a chance of it, was getting into the Ivy League and having that behind me and that network.
See, man, listen, I don't have any sisters. I don't have any daughters, but I do try to I try to be as empathetic as I possibly can in situations that I feel like, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That like that needs my attention. And I think that women are the most important part of our lives. And if we don't take care of women, things will go down real quick for us. Because women, when they're educated and they're strong, we have people like you. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
People who are willing to put themselves on the line, people who are willing to be brave enough to take the chances that some men would not do. Mm-hmm. You understand?
Yeah.
Because
I actually never even really thought about that. I guess there are men who wouldn't do this. Yeah, that's true.
Like you saying at 11 you made the decision to run away. At 13 you got the bus ticket. I'm thinking to myself, would I really do that? Would I really do that? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And women, I'm telling you, man, women have a different way of looking at things, and I think that's one of the things I missed out not having a sister. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And not having a daughter. And I guess God didn't make it that way for me, but it's all right. We'll just speak it.
Interview more women, and you'll start learning more and supporting.
Yeah, we're gonna bring in more women. More.
Not that you haven't been already, but I'm just throwing this out. Like this is what we women need, is that we need the men's support of like us, supporting us, helping us in the media, helping get us coverage and all that kind of stuff.
You know what dawned on me? You know, men. Why would a man go to the rum bar or go to an after-work drinking session instead of going home to his wife and kids? Why would he choose to do that? I'll tell you why. Because he does not know how to lead. He doesn't know how to lead. And you must have the participation of your family to lead. And your woman is there for you to take charge and for her to put in her efforts as well. It
has to be a partnership. And I think, like, we're not trained, like, we're not taught how to have healthy relationships and healthy partnerships. Like, just that's just a failing in general of society. I mean, we go to school, we get educated in everything except in the things that matter the most, which is love, healthy relationships, and managing money.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Those are the things that really matter in life. And if you don't have those skills, it's hard.
That's what I'm saying. You have to be able to step in when you need to step in, men or women.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And that's why I think when we have educated women, because I'm not going to, the women that I come across, my wife, my mom, my mother, they're like super smart people. You see what I'm saying? And when I say something dumb, because we all say something dumb. Don't think you don't. They like, check this, look at it. You know what I'm saying? And I hate when my wife is right and she's right. But it's true, you know? And you can't choose the rum bar over going home and leading your family and being there for your family and doing things that's why I wanted to, let's curtail into mentorship. And let's talk about the meaning of mentors and the reason why they're important. Tell us what you think of that. The support systems.
It's about somebody having your back and being there to call you on your shit. That's what it means to me. Is that somebody who cares enough to have your back and to call you out when you're, not when you need to be called out. And your friends might not do that necessarily, and that's not necessarily, it depends on the quality of your friends, but a mentor, what I consider a mentor, will help you with